The country's on the turn. I just want to say a few things first, as if I'm in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, if I may. So my name is Morris, and I'm a member of the Labour Party. Okay? I'm in Labour, I'm not used to applause. I just want, and I'm also, I'm Jewish, so there you go, keep it going. And I support Tottenham, as you know. So I am used to grief, I am used to suffering, and I take that as my birthright, really. And I want to say, as a member of the Labour Party, as a Jew and as a Tottenham supporter, I completely, when it comes to politics, and this is an answer to your question, Christ is King. Mercy, compassion, kindness and truth. Not kindness or truth, kindness and truth. And our beautiful, beautiful, magical country can never be destroyed. Never. They really tried. So, you know, I always say it's the last thing you want to hear when you go to the doctor. It's progressive, okay? Just to think it through very carefully. It's a disease that kills you, right? And why does it kill you? Because it's institutionalized stupidity, right? So I'm here to just say I believe in solidarity over diversity, that this is where we've got to go. And also that it is my calling in life to redeem my own tradition, the Labour tradition, as a patriotic, working class, democratic British party. And I'm absolutely committed my life to that. That is where I am. And, you know, all of us, you know, have been crucified on Twitter for saying what we say. Alison, this is what we go through, but really you've got to believe in the resurrection. It's fantastic when you get through it. You're stronger, you're better, life is good, you can actually make friends. You know, imagine that. You can fall in love, you can actually enjoy your life. It's really amazing. When you're resurrected, anything's possible. And our country, this is where I get to your point, is that the tension between us is that you're for universal values. I don't like French people, and I don't like the universal rights of man and Thomas Paine and all that. I love what our country is, and our country is a very particular country. So Tony talked about it a bit. Another thing about me, I'm so conservative, I'm much, much, much too conservative to ever be in the Conservative Party. That's for absolutely certain. Because what the Conservative Party did to our working class was disgusting, right? Absolutely disgusting. And their love of capitalism is so strong that it's, you know, there's a Jewish joke, what's the difference between a Hungarian and a Romanian? Well, a Hungarian would sell their grandmother, but a Romanian would deliver. And really, you know, theologically speaking, where is the Conservative Party? You know, the first line of the Bible is, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, but they thought he made a design mistake, he should have privatized it first. You know, they've got this idea that nothing is sacred, but there is something very sacred about our nation. And those are its institutions. So following what Tony said, I'm no longer in any way, I've lost my trust entirely in the Church of England to be the protector of our sacred inheritance. It's a serious, what happened in Canterbury Cathedral, did anybody follow that? I mean, that's a desecration of our inheritance. So I would say that I now speak about the English Church and Catholic and Reformed together, because the Christian inheritance formed our government, it formed our charity, it formed law, it formed our governance. So there may be tensions between you lot and me, because I want to see the restoration of sovereignty. I want to see the resurrection of our institutions. Parliament is hugely important. Leave the human, the ECHR and the human rights, and restore the law lords into Parliament, and restore the common law, which is a treasury of national wisdom. Right into, okay, and then we get to this whole issue with the universities. We've got to understand that our universities have been entirely captured by the progressive disease. They're not sources. They're not sources of blessing, so I think it's really important to close half the universities, at least, and have a purge of the others, by the way. You see, this is where I'm quite authoritarian, Alan. I want to see state sovereignty. Cromwell in 1648 purged Cambridge University. Within 20 years, they had Newton, okay? Purges work. And any academic who stood by and saw one of their colleagues sacked for thought crimes, they should be sacked immediately. That's one of the ways to go. But what I'm saying is I want to see so I think that we're in an age of restoration. This is, when I went to the States to Trump's inauguration, I didn't get it before. It was Make America Great Again. And the important thing was on the again. The working class people wanted to see order. They wanted to see honor in the institutions. They wanted to see the army and the police restored to what they're supposed to be doing. I think our working class wants the same. They love our country and they want to see it as our country, right? With all its peculiarities, our civility, our tolerance, our kindness, all of that. They want to see, and there's got to be a restoration of those things. Police force. So I would close the Hendon College, and I would have a Royal College of Policing. And that would be a restoration of British policing by consent. And it's extraordinary, Alison, what you went through. I mean, this is Stasi business. This is what we think of Germans, that they snitch on their neighbours and they arrest each other. Well, of course they do. They're Germans. So... and the whole point is we're not like that. We don't arrest grannies for having a go at the PTA. That's kind of normal. There's a longer story to say about the BBC, but I'm not for the abolition of the BBC. I'm for the restoration of the Raytheon BBC. And they don't show it, but at the BBC there's an old building where it was actually founded, and on the ceiling are these words, "To the glory of God, grace and truth." You don't need really to invent anything new. We just need to restore our institutions to those things. So where we are as a nation, to come back, thank you, Alan, for asking a very interesting question. Where we, as a nation, we are refinding ourselves. This is what's happening. We've had 40 years of this progressive idiocy. I always say this is not original for today, but what Margaret Thatcher mercilessly initiated, Tony Blair immaculately consummated. This is a whole block of time. We could call it liberal or progressive globalization, no borders, no truth, money is king, working class absolutely disrespected and despised. No, it's no longer that. We're on the shift, but it's what Gramsci called an interregnum. We haven't resolved this issue yet. And in interregnum, he said there was a fraternization of opposites and all manner of morbid symptoms pertain, right? I think that's quite a good description of where we are. But the movement is clear towards the restoration of our great civic institutions, our church, our universities, our parliament, common law, police, army, order, stability. So later, my thing with reform is the clue is in the name. It's really a reformation, isn't it? Yeah, and I'm much more Catholic than that. I want to see institutions, order. I don't want to see violence at all. on our streets, ever. And just so you dislike me more, I really support Shabana Mahmood as Home Secretary. I think she's moving in and I ask you all to have a kind heart towards her, not to be full of hate, as I've seen, but to say, well, as I've seen, I mean on Twitter and places like that. It wasn't a reference to you, Laila. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of hostility to Labour altogether. I'm asking you to use your intelligence and look at the different forces at work within the government. John Healey is a decent defence secretary trying to restore the armed forces. So the police and the army, I think, are coming back. So what there is a huge difference. And this difference, one of the ways of conceptualizing it is from diversity to solidarity. So this is where I'm answering your question. We have to be absolutely guided by those two things that God said on Mount Sinai to Moses when he met him. He said, I'm a God of kindness and truth. We've got to hold the truth that this bullshit has got to be absolutely, confronted. But we've got to do it in our way, in our English way. Christ is King, with a kindness within us, with a renunciation of hate and violence. And I think that the restoration is already underway. I'm astounded by it. And it's driven above all by the working class who have had enough. And I think we've got to honour that. So Labour, is that thing. And we've got to understand that the main agents of this have been middle-class racketeers and grifters and chancers who have captured our institutions, and that needs to be purged and resisted. So I don't know, my heart is full of hope at this moment because I'm absolutely sure that our nation is undefeatable. Brexit changed everything, right? That one moment. And we're now living in the aftermath of what it actually means for politicians to be accountable, to actually have to do things and to act rather than be compliant, procedural, and work within a framework, apologies, Alan, of this universal human rights law that is the opposite. So they say it's human rights, but in fact, it's the elimination of freedom, the elimination of liberty, the absolute desecration we've got to rejoice in the particularity of our nation, that we are distinct, we are different, we are really different to all the other European nations because we're paradoxical, we're traditional and we're modern, we're religious and we're secular, we're just different, and we're monarchical and democratic, all of these things. Anyway, that's enough. Really good morning.
Hold the mic. Can you hear me on? Yeah. So a couple of things happened. Many of you will have seen James O'Brien accused you of being a Lord Haw-Haw type character, which, for those of you familiar, is a really scurrilous, outrageous claim of a actual Nazi advocate. But it's interesting, isn't it, that because we're often told about it's white men, middle class, the Gary Neville point. But here's a middle class white man who's accusing you of being a Nazi sympathiser because you're talking about the state of a city and crime. And also we're seeing today as well that it looks like the BBC have chosen someone who, in their speech, is saying that both Donald Trump and Nigel Farage, they're using the F word, both fishy but also fascist. And we're seeing these terms being pushed around. And I want to, on reflection of what's been said today and also how it's presented to you, how do you address dealing with some of these conversations about who we are, the nation state, the state of things, and what do you think we can do about having a proper national conversation that's united around these things?
So I think we're British, and by nature, British people are quite contrarian. I think if someone in power tells us to stand up, we'll sit down. I think if someone calls me a fascist for telling the truth, well, I'll scream louder about the truth. And I think that's just the British nature. So we don't take kindly to an authoritarian regime telling us what to do or how to think. But I think what has been lost is that there is national unity. We can't pretend there's no differences. I'm Muslim, he's Jewish, he's a black man from Brixton, Alison is this. But there are core values that unite us, and that's under national unity. And those, when you move here, you sign up to those values, or you don't move here at all. And I think as Britain, we're tolerant, and that's tolerance, but it's not submission. It's equality under the law, and we need a leadership that defends patriotism. Instead, we've had a leadership that has told us, keep your head down and don't try and offend anyone. There's nothing offensive about protecting our way of life. There's nothing offensive about being British and being patriotic. And I've said this before, as a Muslim, there are Muslim communities that move here and try and change the country, and try and change the way of life or where they live. And if the country doesn't change, they call us racist for calling it out. But there is nothing racist about protecting our way of life. And I think that has to be recognized, and we have to stop calling that racist. We have to say it for what it is. It is patriotism. When people move here, we have to tell them this is Britain, and there is a British culture, and it's not going away, and we will protect it, and we will fight for it. And I actually agree with you. I really don't like the French. I was married to one. Hence, I was a really strong Brexit advocate. Yes, I've been born again, and there's not, there's going to France, and then there's being married to a Frenchman, and the latter is, yeah. Thank you. But Europe's not like us. Europe like to live by a set of rules. They like to have a federal state telling you what to do. And they tried to impose that kind of regime here. And we said no. We said, when the people that voted for Brexit for me voted for freedom, they voted for a free Britain. Sovereignty, and yet you say we should have faith in Shabana Mahmood, but I'm sorry, people are skeptical, because Shabana Mahmood said that...
Hold on.
No, Shabana Mahmood said that everything she does stems from her religion. There is a video put out where she said that. We are not a Muslim country. We are really a secular country. And I don't want a Home Secretary who views things through the prism of her religion. I want a Home Secretary that views things from the prism of what's best for this country, what's best for Britain. And she can talk tough as much as she wants, but I'm sorry, when you have a judge in Strasbourg that says no and decides who gets to stay here and who doesn't, then she can talk tough as much as she wants. But until we have legal sovereignty over who comes here and who doesn't, we will never, ever have safe borders. And that's something the Labour Party doesn't understand. So I'll end here, Alan, because I see you're getting... I see you're getting stressed. But no. I think for me,
my permanent state. For
me, I do. I think the state of the nation is we're all here and we recognise that there are certain British values and British cultures, and those are to be protected. And we need a leadership that recognises that. And sadly, currently, we don't.
Right. Thank you very much. You keep that there. I want to just ask Alison. We've got a couple of questions that we've got from you guys, which we're going to come into. But following on from this. There's been the idea there's going to be a floating of Islamophobic law for criticising, for having these kinds of conversations, actually. You could say, well, that's being hateful and everything. Where do you see the landscape, Alison, now? And in terms of all the discussions that have been had on free speech, non-crime hate incidents, the court cases, where things are with the parties and institutions and the public, how do you think, where do you see the landscape is for free speech right now?
Is this on?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on, yeah. Well, I think we must resist with all our might an Islamophobia definition. I mean, honestly, have we learned nothing? If I think very bleakly about what will people look back on in centuries ahead, what will they think about Britain during my lifetime, last 60 years, a country that allowed thousands of mainly young white working class girls to be trafficked and tortured That's what this country allowed to happen, right? And countless reports by excellent people, Morris's colleague Louise Casey said this was because people were afraid to call out people because of anxiety about picking on Pakistani men or whatever. If men from a certain community were doing that, at an industrial scale to our children, no one should have been afraid to say, oh dear, let's change the conversation. So I absolutely, no to Islamophobia. I just want to say one thing. This is a reference to Tony, actually, and his excellent report on race, which I highly recommend. One of my police contacts showed me the police race action plan, which is currently being circulated, and it has one sentence about Lord Sewell's excellent report, and it's mainly seeking victimhood. It's saying, we're arresting too many young black men. There's no mention of knife crime in this race action report. It's an exercise in delusion. So what Morris said is right. We need truth and kindness and common sense, right? That's all we want is British common sense. And just finally, Alan, no, I don't think, I know what Laila and Alex are saying. I think the British people have been silenced by some of this nonsense. When you've had a prime minister saying, 99.9% of women don't have a penis, how is that helpful to, absolute? Well, I was going to say bollocks, but maybe that's not the right. But I think we're seeing now in the last week or so with the BBC trans coverage and so on. I think people need to feel, right, we're not going to be told this rubbish anymore because it's pernicious for our children. We need to rediscover that British common sense.
Thank you. I'm going to come to you two. I'm conscious of time. What I actually want to ask Morris next is just on common law and restoration. How do you see that politically happening? I mean, with not too long, but do you see that can happen within the Labour Party? Do you think that's a national conversation with everyone? How do you see that happening and being done and implemented?
This is where it's going. The first thing is, first of all, I've been sabotaged. Laila gave me this anti-tobacco drug, and it's kind of got me stoned, and and it's generated an intense desire to go to the loo. So forgive me if I walk off the stage in a minute. I'm not no platforming anybody. I'm not cancelling anybody. Okay, so I blame it completely on you. You just did it, and it was in front of witnesses, filmed. So the first thing I've got to respond to what Laila said about Shabana Mahmood. She said it many times. One of the big things we've got to do as a nation, if we're serious about solidarity, is genuinely treat Muslims as our brothers and sisters in this nation. We can't just sit there and hate Islam and hate Muslims. And the whole point about the common law and common sense and the House of Commons itself is that this is what Enlightenment people, they want to freeze everything with laws. We have a fluid constitution. And we've got to find the peaceful, sacred heart of Islam in this story. And we've got to build relationships with immigrant communities, and most particularly with Islam. Now, what I'm just bearing witness to tell you is that has a huge response from Muslims who are sick of being branded as victims and all of this. So, Laila, that's a real conversation. What Shabana's faith is about, if you actually look at it, borders, sovereignty, order, security, justice. She's got a very systematic, quite old Anglican theology of what it's about. So, Alan, that's just a huge story that we have to address here. You raised it in your speech. We have a loving heart to people, and what is beautiful about our country has got to grow. And if new people can bring new things to that, new forms of solidarity, I'm all in for it.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say one thing?
You can say one thing.
No, Maurice, I want you to hear it because...
He will hear you as you're walking. Go on, carry on. Morris is just out of control completely. Go on. Go on, Laila.
It's not drugs, number one. It's nicotine spray. But when you have Muslim rape gangs that were ignored by the Labour... When you have Muslim rape gangs that were ignored by the party, Sharia courts allowed to flourish, and then a party that's discussing Islamophobia laws, how the hell can you expect people not to resent Muslims?
No. 1 minute. I want to go to everyone.
It is normal. And you talk about Islamophobia laws, but the biggest racist crime that has happened in this country is the Muslim rape gangs. Those girls were raped because they were white. There is no white phobia laws. There is nothing to protect them. We need to have an honest conversation about certain Muslim communities that come to this country, abuse it, hate it, and worse, abuse our children, and the Labour Party, not only do they look away, they defend them. And I say it as a Muslim.
So I will reply as a Jew. Okay, we'll do that.
Reply as a Labour Party.
As a Labour Party Jew. They see it gets even worse. Obviously, I'm really reconsidering the death penalty when it comes to the rape gangs. Okay, there can be this. I've talked about this before, but there is no step backwards on this. This is a demon that has entered our body politic and needs to be exorcised. I am in favour of a live national trial. You know the show trials? You know I said I was in favour of purging? Now I'm bringing out another aspect of my Stalinism. I want to see show trials. The difference with these show trials is that these people are guilty, right? And I want to see them put directly in jail. When it comes to the Islamophobia definition, that is against every aspect of our tradition, which is essentially based on a mockery of religion, and Islam should be no exception. That's not what I'm talking about, Laila. I'm completely with you, and I have been with that for 14 years.
Okay,
no. Justice
and
is
make the
part
other
of
point,
our
Maurice,
story.
because we're on a time thing, and I want to come to Tony, and then there's a couple more. So, final bit, please. Was that okay?
No,
So, Tony, I want to just ask you. Right, I know you talked about education, but we've seen recently not just this discussion of rape gangs, but there's been in Whitechapel and in Birmingham some examples of straight up the alleyway. There, some examples of communities in this discussion about Islam and the question of radical Islam versus Muslim people. And I know it's one of those things that get people tongue-tied, and it's tricky, because even amongst together in our steering group and all of us, we're having difficult conversations about being British, people that are older that remember what that meant. You talk about it in your book, that it used to mean for some people some elements of racism. Now, are some people weaponizing that? What's the majority decent view? When you see things like what we saw in Whitechapel recently, and we've seen in some towns, where there's chanting and masked people and all of that, and to Maurice's point about the broader, there's 4 million Muslim people in Britain, right? So they're obviously not all Islamists, but this question of some of the concerns around Islamism, the questions of democracy, freedom, privacy, how do we have these conversations? How do you see that thing about being racist within all of it? Just what's your thought on it?
My sense is that we should still, there's two ways of strategizing this. The thing is, I still feel that we're letting go some of those key institutions ourselves. And I think that's the key thing. Look, I remember, people talk about the Windrush. I remember, you see those films where Caribbean people came to Britain. They actually came in their Sunday best to Britain because they thought it was, because that was home, really, in a sense. It was a place that you were going to respect, so you had to put your best dress on to come to it. And I think that kind of sense of almost that national pride, I just think that sometimes we've kind of forgotten of that because we've allowed these things to go on. And then we've allowed the municipalities to come in social services, the whole thing about, and I agree with you with the grooming gangs. Were they allowed to come about because of seriously an evil that came in? But what were the institutions doing? Where was the church? Where was the police force? Where was the social services? You know, these. You know, we've just. You know, and I think what happened, we got conned. I think we just got conned. We thought that we went along with that whole kind of complacency, that kind of sort of liberal, as Morris says, that kind of progressive kind of ideology. And we allowed it, and then everything else, universities, and then we've got our grandchildren who have kind of almost kind of been cult-like kind of infected by postmodern kind of ways of looking at the world and the studies. And so that's the problem we've got. We've got to try and almost, that's where I think real defense should be, in maintaining your institutions. Once you've done that, I think it's harder for the enemy to come in. You know, I do think that is a key. But on the other hand, you know, I'm not sure that in fact all these institutions would be allowed to flourish had we not taken our eye off the ball. So I just feel that that's the key in.
Great, thank you. Alex, briefly, I'm going to come to Alex. I've got a question from the audience, and I'm going to finish with Laila. We're not run over because we started late, but I'm always in trouble with our team for running over. So we're going to carry on this conversation throughout the rest of the session. But one of the questions from Jeff is, why doesn't the government use our Navy and Army to protect our shores and stop anyone entering illegally? So it's one of the questions that one of the attendees.
Well, I'm not the government, and I can't answer that, because clearly they could. I mean, this is the thing. We managed to stop the Spanish Armada. We did D-Day. We get to actually protect our territorial boundaries should we want to. There is not the will to do it. That is very, very clear. And then people will say, won't they, there's all sorts of legal reasons why you can't. But actually, legal reasons can be changed by Parliament. That's the bloody point of Parliament. So there really is, there is a real weak-willed approach to this, but it goes back down to the concepts of supranationalism. And what I would say is this. So I'm in the process of organising something at the moment where I think that what we need to do on this side of the debate is we need to create international networks. If there's one thing that the globalists and the sort of global socialists have been very good at, is they all know how to get together, sing Kumbaya, and plot and make sure all of their systems correspond. Whereas what I would say nominally is the right wing, because we kind of believe in agency and freedom and sovereignty, is we don't really do those get-togethers very often. So what we're going to need, because there's some very interesting elections coming up. You've got the French presidential election. Goodbye Macron, au revoir. You have, at some point, our own general election. What we need is to make sure that a future Reform UK government, that's what I personally want to see happen, of course, and a future Rassemblement government can correspond and work together on this, which we need to start building those relationships now, and that is something that I'm already doing. And I think if we manage to get that and start breaking the network and the edifice of the EU, which has its own agenda, then we can actually, to coin an old phrase now, take back control.
Great, thank you. Laila, last word is going to go to Laila. So Mark has asked, he's saying that in his opinion, that with petitions and emails and protests and everything, often even 3 million around digital ID, sometimes it falls on deaf ears. What do you think people can do to, he uses the term in a disruptive way, not violent, to really get the attention of people in power and change things?
I mean, hello. Yeah. I mean, we're in a democracy, so you can vote no to digital ID. You can vote no at the local elections in May, and you can vote at the ballot box. Sadly, that is the power we have. You can protest, but we've seen that they don't really care about protests. In fact, they've passed new law that if it has a cumulative effect, they're going to shut you down. Imagine that. Because, yes, they were for the Palestinian marchers, but be very, very wary of any government that tries to bring in control under the guise of safety, because inevitably you tend to lose both. So what's going to happen is they say it's for the Palestinian marchers, but tomorrow it's going to be for a march against digital ID. They're going to say it has a cumulative effect, and they're going to stop it. And the thing with digital ID is that everything that you consider to be your rights now can become privileges on the basis of you behaving, on the basis of you complying with government. And that's the problem. It's a form of control because, let's face it how it is, Maurice, we do have a socialist government. Morris, sorry, we do have a socialist government. Keir Starmer said he was a socialist. Hence the difficulty in me pronouncing it. But we do have a socialist government, and socialism depends on dependency, and dependency equals control. So fight it as much as you can. If it was up to me, we're British. We don't comply when people force us to do things, and that's what I'd say you do with the digital ID. They can't force you.